Welcome to TrineDay's Roundtable 36, the day after and beyond. Did our healing ceremony on November 2nd at Dallas Love Field break the spell cast on the nation by JFK's assassination? And where do we go from here? I am Bruce de Torres, moderating. To discuss and report on the above, we've got authors Paul Fitzgerald and Elizabeth Gould, and in tradition, our host, who has published almost 200 books that challenge official history because it matters, Kris Millegan.
Howdy, 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 howdy. And, thank you all for coming here. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. We all got plenty to do. It was a successful healing ceremony. It was really lovely. For many years, I've been going to these conferences and had a real hard time sleeping. After that ceremony, had a wonderful sleep and wonderful sleep the next day. One of the participants went off and saw not really these things called sun dogs, but sun pillars. Okay. And, it was just how it came together. People showed up with rides and it all worked out well. Okay, I thought it was wonderful. Okay, and now to start off here, I like Mr. JFK, and I like to read some of his words because he has very good words. And so I'm going to read the very last Thanksgiving proclamation that he was able to give in November of 1963. Over 3 centuries ago, our forefathers in Virginia and in Massachusetts, far from home in a lonely wilderness, set aside a time of thanksgiving. On the appointed day, they gave reverent thanks for their safety, for the health of their children, for the fertility of their fields, for the love which bound them together, and for the faith which united them with their God. So, too, when the colonies achieved their independence, our first president in the first year of his first administration proclaimed November 26, 1789, as a day of public thanksgiving and prayer to be observed by acknowledging with grateful hearts the many signal favors of Almighty God, and called upon the people of the new republic to beseech him to pardon our national and other transgressions, to promote the knowledge and practice of true religion and virtue, and generally to grant unto all mankind such a degree of temporal prosperity as he alone knows to be best. And so, too, in the midst of America's tragic Civil War, President Lincoln proclaimed the last Thursday of November, 1863, as a day to renew our gratitude for America's fruitful fields, for our national strength and vigor, and for all singular deliverances and blessings. Much time has passed since the first colonists came to the rocky shores and dark forests of an unknown continent. Much time since President Washington led a young people into experience of nationhood. Much time since President Lincoln saw the American nation through the ordeal of fraternal war. And in these years of our population, our plenty and our power have all grown apace. Today, we are a nation of nearly 200 million souls, a few more now, stretching from coast to coast on into the Pacific and north toward the Arctic, a nation enjoying the fruits of an ever-expanding agriculture and industry and achieving standards of living unknown in previous history. We give our humble thanks for this. Yet, as our power has grown, so has our peril. Today we give our thanks, most of it all, for the ideals of honor and faith we inherit from our forefathers, for the decency of purpose, steadfastness of resolve, and strength of will, for the courage and the humility which they possessed, and which we must seek every day to emulate. And we express our gratitude. We must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. Let us therefore proclaim our gratitude to Providence for manifold blessings. Let us be humbly thankful for the inherited ideals, and let us resolve to share those blessings and those ideals with our fellow human beings throughout the world. On Thanksgiving, let us gather in sanctuaries dedicated to worship and in homes blessed by family affection to express our gratitude for the glorious gifts of God. And let us earnestly and humbly pray that He will continue to guide and sustain us in this great unfinished task of achieving peace, justice, and understanding among all men and nations, and of ending misery and suffering wherever they exist. Amen. I'm still waiting for some of my things to come back from Dallas, but it was wonderful. So Paul and Liz, you were there.
Oh, yeah. Would you like me to go first?
Yes, I
All
would.
right. Okay. Picking up on what Kris said, Kris has been going to this. Kris, I don't know how many years you've been going, but many things obviously happened this past week that never happened before. And one of the things that actually happened in the past that when I noticed it, I realized we were actually really connecting to something that was already looking for us. Apparently, every year for the convention, there was a ceremony that was performed at Dealey Plaza. Okay, Dealey Plaza, of course, and the ceremony specifically made a point of acknowledging basically the assassination. And the person who actually was filming this, okay, was actually the same person who, when that ceremony was complete, which had been going on for years, whenever you came to the convention. But again, the focus is on the assassination and the moment that the first bullet hit him, this kind of thing. Okay, you come over to where we were at the airport, at the location where JFK returned after having already been killed, and before his presidency was removed from him, completely, literally formalizing the acknowledgement of his death. It was as if this ceremony that had been taking place had been waiting for us to do what we did, that we were really a step beyond it, but we're still a little bit invisible. That part of the ceremony is well documented and well known and deserves all the attention it gets. But we have this other component now. And it turned out that the same man filming, he came from that event, which would have been between like 12 o'clock and 2, and our event starting at 2:15. So he's rushing over to film our event, okay? But the idea that what we've done, even though it's still invisible, we brought it to the ground. We made the physical connection. That is the whole idea of the empowerment of the true imagination. We were there last year. We didn't even go to the ceremony. No one made clear to us what it was. And of course, the irony last year was that we had not made any contact with Love Field yet because we didn't touch Love Field until we left after our presentation, after the event was over. And that's when we realized that there was something about Love Field we had to further investigate. And so I guess that what when Kris talks about the nature of this thing, I think we have to be very clear about evidence in this realm and being very genuinely open-minded in the most positive way about how the signals come back to you, okay, and how to read them in a way that lets you know that it's, something is beginning. But knowing that the step was coming from Dealey Plaza made me feel far more of a sense of a concreteness, that we were engaging something that will, at some point in the very near future, will become visible, far more visible than it is right now. And that is this deep the Fitzgerald legacy that we've been trying to elevate to help people understand how you have to move away from seeing this thing, in terms of the horror and the bloodlust and all of those things that we know. We've been, literally, we are, drenched in wars and drenched in blood. So trying to get beyond that at this point mentally and mystically, which is really required. You can't take the mental step out of the blood if you don't have the mystical component. And that really is the point about your imagination. You have to begin literally to imagine what you want your future to be. And then it begins to maybe not materialize initially. It shows itself in very subtle forms. Okay, like what happened a year ago when we realized Love Field was something that we had to investigate. Well, here we are a year later. We not only investigated it, but we did something, and we landed it right there in the ground. And now we have this sense of movement and action that we did not have a year. We didn't know this was possible. And that was really an exciting realization. I didn't expect it at all.
Yeah, well, for me, I mean, Liz and I met when I was in Hare in 1970. And that year that he was killed, I was 12 years old. And 2 months later, I became a professional singer for the first time when I was inducted into the Magic Flute, which is this Mozart's Masonic opera. And it was Beverly Sills's comeback opera for the Boston Opera Company, and it was a big deal in Boston. And so here I was singing at the event on the 22nd. I was singing something that I eventually, when I got out of Hare and did Superstar and Broadway, I decided that I really wasn't doing this for myself. My mother had put a lot of pressure on me to be a performer. And I think there was something I resented about that. And I think that came out in my relationship with my father. So here I was, kind of going back to something I'd kind of walked away from back in the 1970s and onto a professional career as a writer and an author and a journalist. And so I was revisiting something that was very pivotal in my life. It was the moment I met Liz, and it's like I got done with it, and I said, "Thank you very much. I've got what I needed out of this singing thing, and I don't need to do it anymore." So here I revisited something. It reconnected me with a very important part of my life that I came from. Got to think about it from an adult perspective and from looking back upon it reflectively. And that's what you really have to do with a lot of things that you made up your mind about because you were in the maze, so to speak, of life. And when you get back to look at it, you say, "Oh, that's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to go through that in order to be the person that I am today and understand these things." So thank you, Kris, for the opportunity to do that at the place at Love Field, of all places. So I worked my own kind of magic with myself in that sense. And it was a great opportunity for that, as well as for everyone else around us. It was really a wonderful thing to experience.
Well, I don't know how many people might have had the chance to view it on Facebook or not, but the ceremony included in its finale Paul leading the singing of Flesh Failures, Let the Sun Shine, which is the finale song from Hare. And he sung it so beautifully. I mean, some of the audio was a little dicey it was a lot of wind. Paul managed to be able to make his total presentation, including the singing of the song, and it was all heard. Everyone else had some kind of issue, whether it was small or big,
It's always easier when your back's to the wind.
Right. No, but you got placed there by Kris.
Yes.
All right. That was.
You don't think he had anything to do with it?
I think he had a lot to do with it. Exactly. So anyway.
I put over in the chat some pictures there. And if you look at them, one is the Love Field area. And as you can see, it's kind of in the shape of a heart. Okay. And the one below it is Dealey Plaza.
Oh,
Very,
wow.
very similar shapes on it there.
Yeah, isn't it
And
though?
Yes,
it,
it looks like you too.
It does.
we most definitely live in interesting times. So Matt, did you what did you feel anything in Turkey?
Well, oh yeah, I felt it all, baby. I felt it all. And my wife as well, she's more psychically sensitive than me. She felt something, she reported. But I did have something that just happened today that I must add, and one of the main reasons I had to come on. And as the resident high strangeness expert, I must add this. And if I could tell you this person's name that this happened to, or who this concerns, it would add more credibility to it. But I was talking to him about the love field ceremony, and this sounds wild. It's out of a science fiction sort of book. But he reports it kind of blew his mind that this love field ceremony had occurred because he reports that over the years, people have sent him pictures of the limousine where Kennedy was shot, and one of the individuals in the limousine, people over the years have said, that's you, that's your doppelganger. It looks just like him. Of course, he was a baby in his mother's womb at the time, but he was quite blown away with this. And if I could tell you more details, it would add more credibility. But time traveling JFK limousine riders, people draw the line at that to disclose that publicly. So just throwing that out there for the record. I heard that today. So there you go.
No, I mean, these things are, we've over our years have interfaced with a lot of people that are high level academics here in the Boston area. And we were sitting at dinner one night with about 8 people, and there was a guy there. I think his name was Kitzinger, and he had taken over the place of Henry Kissinger at Harvard. And we were talking about the mystical nature of some of these events that happen in public life. And he mentioned the fact that he'd had a near-death experience. What had happened was he'd had a brain hemorrhage and had fallen down off his chair, and his next-door neighbor heard him fall out of the chair. And he immediately, when he had this event, lifted out of his body and watched the whole thing. And I said, this is a guy whose credibility was, being a high-level diplomat as well as a Harvard professor. And he basically said, I don't know how to explain it, but I knew absolutely everything that went on. I knew the names of the techs that came to service me. I saw what they did. I saw my neighbor come in next door and knock my door down and help them attend to my needs. So he said, I have no explanation for any of it. And he said, I don't ever think of that kind of dimensional experience at all. He said, but all I know is it happened.
Well, he was a hardcore a materialist dialectician. So this guy was literally saying, I don't really even believe it, but I know it happened.
I don't believe things like this can happen, but it happened.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So,
well, but that's
so anything I think is possible.
Yeah. Well, that's what's so obviously wonderful, I think, about. Yes, Matt. Yeah.
No, I was saying, yeah, anything's possible. I put in the chat there. I just found this. I did not know this existed. I feel like maybe we've talked about it before, but there is a mini series on Netflix, 11/22/63, about a time traveler who goes back in time to avert the death of JFK. And there's another series that's centered around that. It's like based on a comic book. Forget the name of it, but just throwing that out there we've covered a lot of topics, and I want to add the time travel piece here at that's what happened today with me. So
yeah, I have a reaction I'd like to state about what you just said about going back in time and ending something, to believe that that's going to straighten out the world and everything's going to be different. I just don't think it works that way. I don't think that understanding, one of the things we were able to do with the deep research about JFK is learn the deep nature of the motivations of everybody who was a participant in this thing. And when you really get into that level of understanding, you realize that there are things that are literally moving in a direction because they are a resolution of something so huge that you can't understand it. And your natural instinct to want to stop bad things from happening, to want to stop, obviously, the assassination of a beloved president, who wouldn't want to stop that? But once something has happened, there is a level at which you have to work with the reality and not try to think that way, that the secret would be to technology to go back and, and undo the damage, and believe that somehow you know enough about everything, because the connective tissue is too complicated for any individual to know everything. It just doesn't work that way. Anyway, that's my gut feeling about that kind of thinking.
Physical time travel is an impossibility. Any time travel that's done is done through people's heads, and then that all, the observer always affects it. But so we've done the ceremony, okay, and part of the ceremony there was to send JFK's soul back to the spirit of God, okay, and continue on life down here. Now, what's going to happen? Lord have mercy. Okay. But again, we should continue our discussions, okay, about, JFK's vision of peace. And again, you can't have peace without justice. Okay. And so that's what brings us back to the land rights and the land use issue. So what are we going to do now? Again, you wake up in the morning, like I said, this is about the morning after. So where are we going? What are we going to do?
Well, Kris, I'll tell you what I've been up to.
Okay.
I'm in near the end of a 11 lecture course that I'm teaching for the Henry George School on the evolution of the Constitution, how the Constitution has been interpreted over the centuries since its adoption. And it's been a very interesting and vigorous kind of discussion that emanates from that material. All the lectures that I've given have been pre-recorded, and they're on my YouTube channel for anyone who has an interest. And I will be teaching this course again beginning in February at Temple University's Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. So I think there's a lot in this, the issue surrounding the Constitution of the United States, the language it was written in, the inspiration for that language, which largely from the founding generation came from their reverence for Rome and Greece and the ancients. And it's real interesting. Historians have dealt with this at length, and I've tried to cover it in my course, how by the 1830s or even earlier, all of that was discarded. The generation of Andrew Jackson wanted nothing to do with classical education, and nor did most Americans. And de Tocqueville observed this when he visited America and wrote about it, that Americans were focused on the here and now, but they obviously still were very compromised in terms of principles of justice. Not just the land question, which remained unresolved, but certainly the question of whether one individual has any justification for claiming ownership of another individual. So that's what I've been up to. And one other project that's I think will have some importance is that the British publisher Shepard Walwyn approached me about 2 years ago to write a history of taxation in Britain. And I did a draft, I sent it to them, and they sort of put it on the shelf. well, they contacted me recently to work on it again. And so that's a project I'm working on that hopefully will have some impact, at least if it finds an audience in Britain, that will generate some discussion in the place where land monopoly has been entrenched for, I don't know, I guess you'd say 1,000 years. That maybe it'll help generate some discussion. So that's what I'm doing.
Let me ask you a question about that. So how did Henry George look at that? Did he, look at that drop away from the classical and then to what Andrew Jackson was doing? How did Henry George relate to that? And then how did he come up with his ideas?
When George was in San Francisco, living in San Francisco, it was the enigma of poverty growing at a time when the city was brand new practically. He could not understand how a brand new city in a brand new land could so quickly have people who were living on the streets. How could poverty rise so quickly? And so he began to study the political economists of his era and earlier. And he, went back to the leaders of the discipline, to Adam Smith and John Stuart Mill, and he even corresponded with Mill on the immigrant issue that existed back then, which was basically the Chinese immigrant issue in California coming in to work on the railroads. What he did was to try to compare the analysis of those leaders, major and some minor, and say, where are they consistent? And where are they consistent with reality, with observation, and what science would tell you is the truth? And where are they inconsistent? And if they're inconsistent, why are they? And what should I be looking at to correct that problem? And that's how he came to identify the monopoly of land rent and its related monopoly of land generally as the primary problem for the maldistribution of income and wealth in the world.
I want to make a macro observation for anyone encountering this roundtable discussion for the first time live right now or on the video. We handle huge themes. One or two or three of them are obviously the impact of JFK's assassination, the spiritual nature of reality, and like we just heard, the amazing hope from the history and the implementation of the economics, the political economy of Henry George, who most people have not heard of. So if those sound to a first-time viewer or listener unrelated, hang in there and reach out to anybody speaking here. We'll be happy to get you up to speed mighty quickly for the hope and the power of these ideas. Hi, Joyce.
Hi. I'd like to bring it back to JFK's speech at American University and this whole matter of war and peace and the love field, all that. This is the first time I've been on these calls for a while because I've been so obsessed, occupied with the United States complicity in the genocide in Gaza. And in the aftermath of the huge Democratic loss in November, in part because of US policy and that, there is a big Dem exit. And people are talking about creation of a peace party or a labor and peace party. And I vividly remember a tweet recently, somebody said the Democrats will be nominating Liz Cheney and John Fetterman in 2028. That's how far the party has gone since JFK's assassination to a war party. So I just like to throw that into the mix, the three pillars that Bruce outlined, something that you all might want to look at as a way to manifest, from the mystical to the manifestation of what can be done in the arena of electoral politics.
We are definitely focused on the need for massive transformation in the whole nature of, and we've come to an understanding through the work of the Afghan Bachir Khan, who created basically a party, a peace movement, which took the power of the warrior, who were blood warriors. These were the war warriors, okay? And he turned them into peace warriors. And that's part of our understanding, that there is a transition we need to make. You can't just go from being a warrior of war to just peace. You've got to bring the power and transmute it, okay? And that transmutation is clearly, I mean, that's where Bachir Khan's movement proved it's doable. It was doable. This was in the 1920s and 30s, that he was taking these powerful warriors and turning them into 100% dedicated to peace and to helping humanity. And and I think these are the kinds of things can really inspire people to realize that a lot of the efforts that have failed is because there were pieces missing from the understanding. It wasn't that it wasn't real and good. And I think that's what Henry George clearly, I think, came up against. The power of the need for imperialists who were still not ready to give up the war to keep the war going. And they have a real power. And that's what we've lived through. That's what's coming to an end. We've exhausted it. And that's necessary, in order to really get a genuine capitulation. You know how many times they say a heroin addict has to, stop taking heroin? You start with high ideas and you keep crashing and crashing, but then at some point, you finally, when you really are ready, it finally lets go of you, okay? And it doesn't take you again. So that, I think, now a lot of these ideas are in the system. That Henry George's information through Ed and through Alana and Wendell have been out there, keeping it going. But the ability to realize how powerful and simple it could be. So I completely agree with you, Joyce. And the Party for Peace needs to understand its relationship to the warrior. That still, we still need to recognize the warrior quality has to come with it, with the peace, until that is completely smoothed out naturally.
And that fits in with the transformation and from
Right.
Afghanistan too, your work. Yeah.
You're
great.
right. Well, that's what one of the gifts we got from working with the Afghan people. We got so much to bring to this through that. Yes.
And I
Great.
put in the chat a book that Paul turned me on to, National Security and Double Government. And I can't recommend that book enough because it really shows how we got into the position that we're in.
Yeah.
Okay, because basically the intelligence agencies, some corporations, and some criminal gangs have banded together to take away the power from our executive, legislative, and judiciary branches.
I invite those who created and attended the healing ceremony. How would you describe the spiritual nature of reality and the potential power of our every moment, feeling, and thought?
Well, such a simple question.
You have to think about the 20th century and the world that we came from, our parents came from, and that we came from, and it's happening right now. And put it in the light of what Giordano Bruno and the medieval alchemists and the Renaissance Neoplatonists were trying to do. They were trying to, Kris brought up this idea about, and Ed brought up these ideas of what the abandonment of the principles of the Enlightenment that were behind the foundation of the United States and the Constitution. Well, a lot of that stuff came out of the Renaissance. A lot of the Masonic grades came out of the Renaissance, the magic of the Renaissance. And there was another layer in it. There was something called the simulacrum was created that would enable the leaders of our nation to establish a hierarchy that would, through their sacred royal families, that would reinstate the original perfect harmonic universe in which we were created from the top down by God, and that it would be like a big Christmas tree, and we would be the lights on the Christmas tree. And that would be the harmonic world in which we would all live in. And the golden age, we would go back to a golden age where there would be no diversity, there would be no argument about anything. Everything would be absolutely established. There would be a final order. God's will would be manifest on earth. So that was part of the objective of a lot of the people, John Adams and his Dragon Society here in Boston. You had a lot of people who were really looking to reestablish this connection with this, whether it was real or not, this ancient place that the builders were able to build pyramids, and they were able to build incredible, the seven wonders of the world that we struggle over today. And increasingly, cannot even imagine how the ancients were capable of doing these things. So that's the kind of thing that was the inspiration that has fallen apart over the years. And, it might even say the simulacrum, what's happening right now, in my opinion, is that the simulacrum that's been created in Western society since the Middle Ages and since the Renaissance, through the minds of people like Giordano Bruno and the artists, the playwrights, and the royal families that were the leaders of their nations. The fabric is coming unglued at this point, because the people, they were missing an element, and that was the spiritual embodiment of the humans who constituted the simulacrum that they created. And so I think that's, in a way, kind of what the high strangeness, you might say, is all about. There's this massive power out there, the power of coincidence, the things that occur that we really cannot define with our conventional logic. Well, our conventional logic was the way in which a control mechanism was imposed on our psyches, and has been imposed on our psyches over the last 600-700 years. We cannot think beyond a certain point because we've been trained not to think beyond a certain point.
Prussian method.
With the Prussian method of education, it reinforced that kind of rigid discipline in which we think and we activate the world in which we were supposed to be living. It's to the point where we're not really living an authentic existence any longer. But the existence is all around us, as the words from the song go. I'm living in a world, it's all around me. It's in me, it's around me, and I can't feel it. I want it. I want it to be with me. I want to be able to swim in the ocean I was made to swim in. And I'm being told I can't swim. So we're drowning in this kind of contradiction of where we should be going and where we've been told we're supposed to be going. So I really think we really are at a very special moment for us, where we have the opportunity to embrace new ideas and an openness. And I've noticed this since we've been to Dallas. I've noticed that people, their tone has changed. When we went out, we had to go out and shop immediately for Thanksgiving. The family was coming. We had to go out to the supermarket, and people were extremely courteous. And they were knowingly so,
helpful,
and helpful about doing things and getting things done. And we had the same experience with the people in Dallas that we had with the people in Boston. Everybody was equally kind of lifted, as if some burden had been lifted from their shoulders of expectation, that they were now free to be the human being in which they were and participate in the society that we all want. So at any rate, I think these things are happening.
And Liz and Kris, and even Alana, because of your comment in the chat, the veil is thinning. What would you add to this solicitation of of a debriefing of the impact of the healing ceremony and the latent power of a spiritual imagination to the extent we see what we look for. If we set ourselves, Paul, every morning, I'm going to be as kind, as helpful as I can be. I think 9 days out of 10, that's how life might show up to us. But Liz, Kris, and Alana, in any order, if you want to jump into that particular question, please.
I would definitely like to affirm the feeling that literally what you give out, you get back. It seemed as if, at least from our personal perspective, that there was some kind of shift. And certainly, I'm sure the election had something to do. It's almost like a bubble burst. And now people are in a new reality because in many ways, that whatever was going on there, it really was transformative. Okay. So I wouldn't focus so much on the outcome per se. I would focus on the effect that it's had. And so things are letting loose in some way. Systems are no longer the same. All right. But when we talk about this from a spiritual perspective, or an engagement where you're getting an exchange from someone and it's about feelings, and I think you could put that in the category of spiritual. When you get a feeling from somebody, I mean, one of the moments that I had in the airport was when Paul had to go off and do something, and I was standing there looking for someone to ask a direction of, and this man stopped me. He said, "Can I help you?" I didn't ask him. I was looking for someone who had like airport tags on them because I thought they'd know the answer. And I was just stunned. He could tell by the look on my face that I needed help. And, that doesn't happen every day, especially in a busy week like this at an airport. So that, and seeing that and believing, it's also about believing that that's real, and opening up that kind of exchange and having it happen all the time, so that you begin to realize that whatever your perception of the problem, we know that this coming together part with people that we may not have all had common ground with, okay, may be possible when we begin to focus on what we can do together and not what we're upset over.
And I meant Kris and Alana, if you want to dive into this.
We've had some very interesting times we've gone through here, okay, with the pandemic and everything. I was talking with some people at the conference about how Western civilization, how one of the things that we have done, okay, in time is that when we were tribes in Europe, okay, we were continually battling each other, completely, taking over this tribe, taking their women, killing the children, blah, 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 blah. So by the time that we ended up here, we really didn't have a strong culture in the way of creating strong social beings, rather than we just, because like we don't have a ceremony for boys and girls when they reach 12 and 13, which it normally happens out there in tribes. And so I truly see that these next couple of years, I mean, there's going to be a lot of introspection, a lot of people looking at each other. Now, whether there comes out of a new political party or something, but, the United States of America is an amazing thing, okay? Will we survive? There are people betting that saying that we won't survive, okay? So I say it's up to all of us, okay, to look at, what we're doing and where we're going. My agenda has been basically creating a better world for our children. As far as the spiritual aspect of it is, plenty of people have told us about, what to do, that, we need to realize that we're all one and that we need to treat each other as our brothers and sisters.
Amen. Alana, are you there? Have you heard my?
I am indeed. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you to the team that made Love Field ceremony happen. Bravo. Congratulations, you did it. And in doing so, you manifested a thought and a vision, a strategy, a purpose, and intention that became real in time space 3D. Okay. So mind is the creator and energy follows thought. The time for analysis for many of us is over. Analysis in terms of what the heck's going on? Why are these wars? Why is there poverty and wealth and power inequality? That question has been answered by some of us on this call sufficiently so that we want to manifest a new vision. Yep. And this group, this roundtable, gave me a tag several months ago that I like. My tag is Earth Rights Visionary. What does Earth Rights Visionary person do? The vision is to bring the truth about who we are into the macroeconomic big picture, how our economy is structured, way down to the taxation policies, which as a young woman interested in spiritual issues, I never thought I'd be interested in taxation policy until you connect the dots and ask the big question. I am contributing to all of this malfeasance and all of this wickedness by paying taxes that then expends my money for war machines, military, industrial, even the censorship complex is trying to gag the truth. So we got to look at this energy of tax policy and shift it from the tax that's a theft. When you tax labor and earned income, that's thievery. That's government taking what's ours. If our neighbor came over and took a bunch of money out of our wallets, we'd call that theft. The government taxing us on our earned income is theft. That income tax has been gotten onto the people since 1913 when the Federal Reserve was established. Now, what we want is to share the earth. Warfare or earth share, that's the question. Ed's doing these talks on the Constitution. Democratic governance has a very serious crack in the Liberty Bell. There is no economic democracy set forth, and an Earth Rights visionary bases economic democracy on the rights to our planet as a birthright. This is indigenous wisdom. The Maori people of New Zealand talk about Tarangawewe, a place to stand. Why are they homeless? They have no right to be anywhere, no right to sleep anywhere. None of us do. So the treatment of Mother Earth as chattel for buying and selling and hoarding and grabbing is a deep, deep wrong. Evil means off the mark. Evil is live backwards. To hit the mark in a bullseye is the center of the bullseye. Evil is when you miss the bullseye of the truth. So the truth is oneness. We're all one. The many in the oneness, the diversity and the oneness. From the oneness, it's one human family to share this little planet. So my vision for moving forward with our roundtables is to get increasing commitments for actual work to implement this tax shift to the commons rent policy right where each of us lives, and getting detailed plans. You'll get all the help and support that you need about how to do it.
Alana.
That's the energy I want to work with.
Amen.
Okay, that did it.
Alana, let me encourage everyone to search for you and your works.
Go to the IU.org, the International Union for Land Value Taxation. The IU.org got videos, articles, There's a book section. My whole book is there as a free PDF.
And her book is The Earth Belongs to Everyone. If you are meeting Alana Hartsock for the first time, you are welcome because she is a powerhouse along those lines, a partner in these efforts. I'm going to call on Wendell because he's got his yellow hand up there, and a longtime friend and participant in these roundtables. Wendell Fitzgerald, how are you?
I am good, thank you. I wanted to address the issue that was stated as the purpose. The question was, did we break the spell?
Yes.
And did we break the spell not only that was cast by JFK's assassination, but Liz and Paul have gone historically way down the rabbit hole back to the history of the Fitzgeralds. I had no idea of this stuff a year ago. Great. I mean, it's just been a real revelation to me personally, being a Fitzgerald. Liz said, no, you can't see what happened. Oh, yes, you can. Now, you need to be a bit of a mystic, and you need to understand where the folks who cast the spell, where they are now. And they saw what happened on the 22nd with that ceremony. They saw that their spell that they cast, John Dee being one of the major spellcasters, the alchemist, the magician back in the time of Elizabeth I, it was clear that Elizabeth's people during that time, they tried to eliminate all the Fitzgeralds in Ireland. They never succeeded at that. They couldn't. And so the spell was broken all back to the beginning of the spell of the folks, who started the British Empire. There were lots of evil people long before that, but the spell that Paul and Liz intuited in their life experience that was involved with the Kennedy assassination was begun during that era of the Elizabethan times, and John Dee in particular. And John Dee, I could see him. He sees this, and he and his cohorts, his collaborators have been seeing what's coming in this regard for a very, very long time, and they are done. The folks who have been in control, they know that their time is done. And what happened, just what part of what they had done was to completely obfuscate what Henry George said. George somehow, an avatar of the First Order, is in my book, to be able to put his finger on and articulate what's the root cause of all of this, of the inequality of wealth, and bringing that all forward, the inequality of wealth, and all of these, why isn't democracy working? How has that been co-opted? And they somehow cast a spell. Nope, we Americans, we will not talk about this. And to this day, the spell has, when I've been at this for 50 years plus, and as Ed has, and Alana. And it always kind of blew my mind. Why? I mean, this is so obvious, the justice of this and the rightness of this, that it was a spell. It's been broken. That's it.
Onward.
Thank you very much. Marty has something to share or ask, and then we might go into final thoughts and conclusions in consideration of this being the day before a holiday. Hello, Marty Lewis.
Hi. I'm so grateful to be here and listening to you all. It's so obvious that we're in the midst of this transformation. Listening to Paul and Liz today was really reminding me that we're in this unified field, and it's all in divine timing when we're able to come out, or it all comes together for us. I was kind of relating a little bit to Matt too on the doppelganger thing. I mean, I think I don't know, you probably all know Greg Braden, but I've studied him a lot, and he was one of the first. He was a geologist, first 30 people invited in to study the Dead Sea Scrolls. And when they went to Tibet, which they were record keepers, he said he was allowed to go into this library, and they said that the universe, the key to the universe is compassion. You have gratitude, but gratitude still has a little bit of ego. Like, I got this car, I got this house, I got this award or whatever. It's kind of an attachment to yourself. But compassion is about giving something to somebody when you're not trying to receive. And that is sort of like the final key to the universe, because you get what you give, and then it comes back to you through grace. So you're not asking for yourself, you're asking for the whole world. I think most of us have probably been universal soldiers for lifetimes. We've been around together for a long time. I know I feel that with Liz. I just want to say how grateful I am to all of you for being in the unified field and us going through together and listening to Paul's stories about hair and everything. I love it. I was at Woodstock, so I've been doing the concert thing for a long time.
Nice.
Yeah, but anyway, I want to thank you all. So, and I believe we're breaking through now for sure.
Thank you, Mark.
I've been thinking about this for a while. I feel there is something about our generation, the Woodstock generation, I think is a good name for it. Okay. We are the generation, I believe, who was most impacted at a critical age by the assassination of JFK, by everything that happened. And we are now at a point, I know many of us here are, where when we were doing our anti-Vietnam War thing, we were doing it for our own future. But now we're doing it for our grandchildren's future. But we know that something got diverted, and we understand that we are the ones who have to bring it back. I believe that's why I really was excited when our friend, when Mary brought Sky to our event, and I had a chance to chat with him. It turned out that Sky was dating a woman in New York whose sister was one of the first piece. She was in the original Hair production. She was the dance captain that came up to Boston to teach Paul's tribe, okay, about the dances for the show. So you're talking about, we have a moment to bring back what was taken from us with this whole thing. And somehow the Hair connection being revitalized through Sky's story. I mean, this is someone who, not only was she in the original show, but she was in the album, I think maybe even the film. So you're dealing with there's a whole movement associated with all the people who came out of that. And not everyone who, obviously was a part of Hair was necessarily, in the anti-war Vietnam movement. But for those of us who really did think that was the key to everything and did feel that we really had succeeded, only to discover that it didn't happen. Like Henry George put out all this good stuff and his book sold more than the Bible practically in the end of the 19th century, but it didn't stop what still happened. Well, we got the same shaft on our peace movement, but now we have the chance to bring it all forth. And rather than being angry at what didn't happen, we really have to focus. And I really like the idea of making it the boomer generation coming through finally. We've been vilified by some people as dippy hippie acid heads. We blew our peace movement. I've heard that.
Liz.
Very, very upsetting.
And if it's going to be the return of the energy and the intentions of the boomer generation, maybe it's the boomerang generation. I invite Paul to contribute final thoughts before swinging it back, unless there's an audience participant who's got a brief comment or question. Going once, going twice.
I will say one thing to Liz. I'm a boomer And I was, as a young person, a member of the local SDS chapter.
Ah,
I have over the years tried to recommunicate with all of my old colleagues. No success.
uh-huh,
They gave up their activism.
yeah.
I haven't, it's been very disappointing. And that's what I'll say about our generation.
Okay, well, I would make quick point to you. SDS basically was compromised and infiltrated. So, part of what you might be experiencing.
I don't think that had anything to do with it. Just people
No?
went on to become adults. They married. They went into their careers.
Well, you could,
and many of them just gave up their activism along the route.
yeah, I understand. I'm just pointing out, though, specifically SDS was one of those groups that had undercurrents of, there was a lot of infiltration in the peace movement, that affected people in ways. And there were people who were also working on behalf of hidden interests. So you have issues about these things in the whole peace movement. It wasn't just SDS, but SDS was well known.
I just tell you, it's why I love these roundtables. Look at these little subsets of topics. We could just do another 3 hours. Not
Anyway,
today.
Bruce, you left it in my hands, so I'll just simply say that I think that the simulacrum we've been living under, it is finally, it's vaporizing as we speak. So, and the fact is that we who are of the boomer generation can take the lessons from the last 70 years, put them together into something wonderful. And, I think that potential is here. And I know our kids and grandkids want that wonderfulness to happen. I know that there were a lot of mechanisms along the way that kind of tried to sustain or redirect the simulacrum.
Yeah.
I think now I always thought that was too big a project for small minds to deal with, and in terms of government or in terms of, and we involved ourselves in government and a lot back in the 1970s and 80s, the 1980s, and all very well-meaning people that had nothing to do with SDS or the protest movements, but really, had Roger Fisher at Harvard Law School, all of these people who were interested, Paul Warnke, who wrote the SALT II Treaty to try to put limits on what was going on with nuclear weapons. George Kistiakowsky, I interviewed. I've got a film of him that I've been thinking about uploading so people can look at what he had to say back 45, 50 years ago about the situation, what had to be done about it.
That wasn't done.
That wasn't done, and now we're living with it.
Yeah.
And so, we experienced all these people. They were very dedicated and very sincere, lovely people. And they just shook their heads about, what the way things were being directed. Well, now I think we have a clear vision about what we can do about it and how to do it. And Marty works with the military, and I think the idea of taking the idea of warriors for war to warriors of peace, we need that kind of transformation, and that's a spiritual transformation. Yeah. We need to take that and put it back into our Constitution, into the belief in our country, and that we can do good things in the world. And we're the ones who can do it because we understand what needs to be done.
Thank you, Paul. It's an example of getting clear on what you want, like Kris Millegan knows and has said for years, to create a better world for our children. And that's where it all begins and ends. It's getting very clear on what you want and having the courage to speak up about it, because then you find and you get attracted to events like this, people like this. Kris Millegan.
Yes, onward. I'm going to read here from the prayer card from JFK's funeral, because we have set his spirit free, and it's up to us to do the work. Now the trumpet summons us again, and not as a call to bear arms, though arms we need, not as a call to battle, though embattled we are, but a call to bear the burden of a long twilight struggle, year in and year out, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, a struggle against the common enemies of man, tyranny, poverty, disease, and war itself. In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it, and the glow from that fire can truly light the world. With a good conscience, our only sure reward, with history the final judge of our deeds, let us go forth to lead the land we love, asking his blessings and his help, but knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own.
Amen.
Amen.
Onward to a better future for our children. Amen.
Thank you, Kris. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.